Welcome to this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. Today we're going to be talking about public utilities. We'll talk about what the department does and also answer some of those questions you may have about your bill, just to kind of cover as far as the ins and outs of that. Stay tuned. Welcome back to On the Scene, joined now by two guests from our Public Utilities Department. We have Al Moore, who's the director of the department, and Kim Wickert, who is the Utility Operations Accounting Manager, and we're going to talk about public utilities. Surprise, surprise. So let's kick it off by talking about what all the different things, I should say, the department does. I think people think of public utilities. It may mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So let's just be clear on what your department does and what all the staff in there, the men and women who dedicate themselves to keeping everything running and working and customer service and everything. So kind of lay out how the department is structured and what y'all do.
Well, Tim, of course, we're responsible for providing potable water to our customers in the city. And also the collection of wastewater to transport to the Hampton Road Sanitation District for treatment. That's our primary responsibilities, and we have 6 operating divisions to accomplish that. And they're made up about 125 staff members, that are very dedicated staff members, I'll say.
Right.
And we'll start where a lot of it happens is coming out of the treatment plant. So we have a division, one of our 6 divisions is water production and water quality, which is a check and balances. We have the production staff who are maintaining the operations of the plant. And then we have the water quality staff who's checking the parameters of the water to ensure what we're putting out is the highest product that we can.
Sure.
Once it gets out of the plant, and then of course it goes into our main lines and distribution. And we have our line maintenance division, which are responsible for the 400 miles of water pipes and the 300 miles of sanitary sewer pipes that we have in our system. And of course, they're working 24/7. We have people on call after hours should we have an issue.
Correct.
We have our maintenance division, which is responsible for 150 sanitary sewer pump stations that are spread out in our service district. And of course, real quickly here, our service district extends from the James down to about the airport. We do not serve the whole city, just more of the urban suburban development cores.
Gotcha.
Following up from our maintenance division, we have our engineering division, which of course primarily they review our capital projects or manage our capital projects that we're building. They review developer projects. And then we have our construction inspection staff under that division that are out there in the field reviewing or inspecting projects as they go along. The customer service division, which really where a lot of our customers have their interaction at, is located here, of course, in City Hall on the first floor. And they're responsible for 25,000 accounts that we have in the system, and working both from inquiries, getting joint billing with HRSD or Hampton Road Sanitation District, and also delinquency program, and just showing that if we have a question, those are the people who are really on the front lines of most calls, and they're there here at City Hall. And then, of course, after that, we have the administration division, and we're responsible for the long-term planning, working with our regulatory agencies, the regional with our other partners, and just the overall operation oversight of that.
So when we think about water in the city of Suffolk, it's public utilities, kind of soup to nuts, kind of covering the whole gamut there when we talk about that. Right. And I think a lot of times, and I'm glad the overview that you did, because a lot of times people will reach out and it confuse sort of public utilities and public works as far as with you know, you kind of, pardon the expression, create the water in a figurative sense, but if it's a matter of runoff and things like that, they're handling that aspect where you care, kind of like you said, the potable water as far as to homes and businesses and things. So, but again, just trying to clear up some of that confusion that sometimes comes up because people think cities, you know, don't really know sometimes where to call, and we kind of make sure those calls get routed properly. So, and you talked about a very diverse department as far as that, and it sounds like your workforce as well, with their background and skills and training that come in. I mean, these are men and women who really have to know what they're doing, you know, the skills they bring to the table, the training that you impart upon them, you and your staff, and to really get to where they're maintaining and operating and doing this thing at a very high level.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, in our engineering divisions, we have PE licensed engineers in there. But really, our technical guys in the field is really where I think a lot of the rubber meets the road. I mean, You know, I go out there and I'm amazed as we go through a January with the snowstorm and all the water main breaks, and they're out there doing it all day, all night long, and in sub-freezing temperatures, and it's very impressive. And you know, everything doesn't break down between 8 and 5 o'clock. You know, it's normally 5:45 on a Friday.
Correct.
When things may go south, and they're out there getting the job done.
Right. Well, you mentioned customer service, and Kim, that's where we're going to bring you in, and you know, 24/7 as far as people being able to respond to the calls and respond if there is a leak or a blockage. So the question is, if you have a leak or a blockage, who should they be contacting, and how does that process generally work once contact is made?
Well, they would always contact customer service first. Right. The 514-7000 number is a 24-hour line, so you can reach someone any time of the day or night. So a sewer blockage, we would want them to contact us. We want to come out and make sure it's not something happening in the city system.
Correct.
Before they, you know, go to the expense of hiring a plumber.
Sure.
If they have a leak in their home, then we would require them to call a plumber and to fix that. The city's responsibility ends at the water meter and the sewer clean out, both outside. So anything prior to that we would maintain, but up to the customer's home, it would be their responsibility.
But as you said, I mean, certainly you want to have staff respond to make sure where exactly the problem may lie, because it could be a bigger issue, or it could be something that turns to be small, but it depends upon certainly responsibility as far as homeowner versus city, or where that kind of line is drawn as you described.
Right, and a lot of times a customer will contact us when they receive a high bill. Thinking that maybe they don't have a leak. So we will go out there and investigate that first before they call a plumber. If you see movement at the meter, that means there's something going on. You know, everything should be off in the house. There should be nothing moving at all.
And I would ask this question to either one of you just to jump in. Knowing where the meter is as a homeowner or even a renter, as far as knowing where that is, that's a pretty important thing to do, correct? As far as knowing where that shutoff valve is in the event that you had to react, right?
Oh, absolutely, and it really comes in, you should know what try to know what your plumbing is in your home. So you have a shutoff point.
Correct.
Because I'll take January when we have cold snaps. We have 300 some calls coming in for cutoffs. Because people are experiencing issues at the home. We're trying to respond efficiently and as fast as we can, but if you know where your cutoff is, it really helps you out in the long run.
Gotcha.
And of course, we'll get there and we'll cut it off at the meter, and then when you're ready, we'll come back and turn it back on.
Gotcha. Again, part of that customer service. Now, Kim, if someone has a leak, is there any kind of an adjustment program, or how does that work, and what do y'all do with the customer to kind of work through that process?
Right. We do have an adjustment policy. So what we require is the customer put something in writing to the department if they have a plumbing repair bill, or just a statement if they've done the repair themselves. Just noting what they repaired and the date of that repair, so we can review their usage for an adjustment.
Got it.
Our policy is 50% of any usage that is over their normal usage for water, sewer, and wastewater on an internal leak. But if they have a leak outside, say a busted pipe under the home, they do 100% of the sewer and wastewater treatment on that bill. But still 50% of the water.
But again, working with them to make sure it's equitable in both parties in that sense to try to work that process. Again, a meter change-out program. Talk a little bit about what that is and kind of what's going on with that process as well.
Certainly. To date, we've changed close to 10,000 meters. We try and change out any meter over 14 years old.
Got it.
We are in the process of putting in the Census iPearl meter. That is an electronic meter. It stores 30 days data, so hourly readings for 30 days.
Got it.
Quite a bit of data that we can pull. And it also gives us leak alarms for 90 days. So if a customer had usage around the clock for a 24-hour period, within 90 days it would notify us that they had a leak.
Got it.
So we've been successful in helping customers identify, issues when they maybe didn't think they had a leak. But when we see usage at 2, 3, 4 in the morning when most are asleep, that's a good indicator that something's going on.
And certainly, you don't want the customer to find out that they have a problem when they get the bill and they see all the usage, and then that's when they're determining it. I mean, again, I've had unfortunately a leak in but you hear the water, you know it, and know where that turn-off valve is and those kind of things, and then obviously reaching out to your staff to let them know, look, there may be an issue, and finding out where it was and working through that process. And I have to say, through personal experience, it's always been a very good, timely response, very good information. Folks are showing up, very courteous. take care of what they got to do, notify, and they're gone. And I think that's, I guess in a perfect world, that's really what you're looking to do, is with positive resolutions where you can find them.
Where we can find them.
Correct.
And of course we do like to narrow it down. As an engineer by trade, you always want the answer.
Sure,
but,
sure.
I think what's great about the new meters, as Kim's point out, is our ability to go back once we're talking with a resident who's received a high bill, that we can go out, download the information from the new meters, where we couldn't do that on the old meters.
Right, right.
And it just left you with some unknowing items.
Right.
Here we can really analyze.
Yeah, kind of maybe see where the extra usage started and ended, as far as depending upon the circumstances, and that's a very unique thing. So does someone have to hook up to that, or they can download it wirelessly? How does that work with your staff?
They have to come to the field.
They do, okay.
Come to the field, and they plug it in with a laptop, and we download it, and we bring it back, we analyze it, and then we get back with the customer and share it with them, what we're seeing.
Very good. Well, we mentioned the word bill. So let's talk about billing. Certainly we partner with a couple organizations to make sure that's done. If you can explain a little bit how that process works, that relationship, as well as what people see categorically on each bill that they get, because there are a couple different things that how it's broken up.
Certainly. Of course, we started joint billing with Hampton Roads Sanitation District back in 2007. And of course, we worked in that for about 2 years prior, making sure that we had everything. And it was a great opportunity for the city, basically because they are able to get a more robust system that with all the audits, everything in it, where we couldn't afford it on our own.
Right.
And so we went along, we worked with them, and the system's called Hampton Roads Utility Billing System, HRUBS.
Right.
Is where you write your check, is HRUBS. So but really it's a joint billing. HRC manages it. We use the same database. So a customer that comes in to sees us, or if we add a customer because we extended sewer, they end up on the same database, where before it didn't happen. I mean, sometimes we had some issues way back in the early 1990s.
Right.
But anyway, as we generate the bills, we have 4 items on our bill. We have the meter service charge. The meter service charge is a per day charge. It's a ready to serve charge is what I call it. It's basically, we have a lot of expenditures that we have for the systems which are not really relegated to use. We have debt service, everything. And this is just a small portion of the bill that that we charge for ready to serve. It's really more looks like a flat fee.
Got it.
But we do set it up on a daily basis because we may bill for 31 days 1 month and 28 bills, 28 days another bill. The next item is our water service charge. And of course that helps support the operations of the plant, our line maintenance staff that maintains our water systems, part of our debt service that's relegated to our water side. So that water service charge, it's based on a volumetric charge, which is based on 100 cubic feet. Well, everyone goes, what's 100 cubic feet?
Good question.
It's 748 gallons is 100 cubic feet.
Gotcha, okay.
And it's just a item that we use through the industry, 100 cubic feet.
Gotcha.
Now, parallel to that, we have this sanitary sewer service charge, which is, again, similar to the water charge, but it's based on supporting the sewer operations of our system. And then final element is Hampton Roads Sanitation District's treatment charge, their service charge. And that's, we deliver the wastewater to HRSD, then they treat it. Of course, all of the wastewater in Suffolk's treated up by the Merrimack Tunnel, and then discharged to the James River when it's of the quality it needs to be. Got it.
But again, on every bill you see, and I'm thinking of my own, that's broken out. So you can see by those categories, and certainly it's nice to again, just you have the lump sum, everybody focuses on that, but if you look at that, you can kind of see the breakup of that, how it's distributed. And you also can go online and pay and get your bills electronically, where you get an email saying, hey, you have a bill out in the system, and go and pay, which saves some back and forth and waiting for it to come in the mail and whatever. Certainly people can come to City Hall, as you said, to pay that bill here, but paying online is also a nice feature, I guess, part of that system as well.
Yes, and I'll let Kim talk about that.
Well, it is, and they can also pay by phone, and it's no charge. So you can use a credit card by phone.
Very good.
Where we don't take credit cards in the office.
Got it.
They can still pay with a credit card over the phone, no additional fee.
Okay, very good. So again, but making it convenient. So basically, however you want to pay, basically there's a way to make that work within the system, correct?
Yes.
And to close it up, we talk about the different items, and a lot of it's wastewater, a lot of it's water, and
Sure.
it's always referred to as the water bill.
I know, I know.
Really, it's our utility bill.
Right, that's right, that's right. And again, defining utilities and sort of, I guess who's doing what in the process. But one other phrase that we hear is that public utilities operates under a utility fund.
Yes.
Explain a little bit about what that means for what the impact it has on the customer as far as how that works, and really how that works for the City of Suffolk municipal government with the operations of public utilities.
Okay. Well, yes, the Department of Public Utilities operates under the city's utility fund.
Right.
It's an enterprise fund. We operate sort of like a business.
Mm-hmm.
All of our expenditures, all of our revenues offset all of our expenditures. There's no general tax dollars utilized to support the utility fund. The users of the system,
Right.
Our customer base, revenues from our customer base support our expenditures.
Sure.
So we're operating as a business. We go to the bond market separately than the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, we go through the Virginia Resource Authority to borrow money. So we pay our debt service separately by the revenues of the system.
Got it.
And when the city's being rated by Moody's or Standard & Poor's or Fitch,
Right.
they're looking at how is the utility system operated? Is it independent? And that helps the strength of the overall city's rating. So it's important that we remain self-sustaining and maintain our ability to support our operations.
Sure. Now, certainly with Suffolk still being a relatively young city, growing city,
Yes.
I think that's where we see a lot of that coming into, where you start talking about enterprise fund and that kind of thing. And how does that all connect up to what results in what your build and what those charges are? And I know going through the budget process, we usually get a presentation from you and your staff talking about what we can look forward to for the next year based on bond markets and also based on the growth of the system and things like that. How does that all interconnect?
Okay, well, there's a lot of things that influence
Right.
the utility bill
Right.
or in our utility rates.
Sure.
Of course, we have our operational costs, but they generally are baseline a little bit increased. What really has the largest impact to the city's current rate structure is our debt service.
Got it.
And as a growing city, if you remember, we grew at a 32% rate between 2000 and 2010, and really I say 2007 because the building collapse happened around 2007,
Sure.
so growth slowed down at that point.
Correct.
But we had to have the capacity built into our system to ensure that we had water on the maximum day of the year, which is, of course, your highest use day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need that capacity. Well, you don't build capacity on a yearly basis. You build it projecting out.
Right.
So you don't upgrade the water plant every year. You upgrade the water plant every 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And hopefully longer,
Right.
generally.
Strategic growth. I mean, in that sense,
Yes,
you don't
yes,
just
you
wing
got-
it, so to speak.
You got a long-term plan.
Right,
this.
right,
I mean,
right.
Because to upgrade a water plant takes 5 years.
I was going to say,
from
yeah,
design, concept to completion and
Sure,
construction.
sure.
So as we look at that and building into supporting our growth and extending sewer into unserved areas, we had probably 20-some areas that we extended sewer that were on septic systems.
Right.
We had 36 well systems in the city that was in violation of fluoride
Right.
regulations back in 2000. So we brought services to those folks. So we incurred debts. We issued bonds, which we have to pay for. I call it the house mortgage.
Right.
So as we have that, our debt service really is about 40% of our operating cost.
Correct.
So as we look at that, now moving on, another thing is our financial policies.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be strong, you want to remain self-sustaining. So a couple of our policies that really influences where we go and how our rate structure is we have a reserve for minimum of 90 days, minimum. So as you're looking to operate, you want to ensure you had debt service payments and operation costs in your reserves for a minimum of 90 days. Well, that's not very strong either.
Right.
You want to have a little bit more than that as
Sure.
if you would go to get rated individually by the utility fund from one of the rating agencies.
Right.
So we need to keep that fairly strong. The other thing is our debt service coverage. When you're borrowing revenue bonds, there's a bond covenant that you must have at least 1.15 revenues times that. So it's like if you're using cash or one-on-one, we need to generate sufficient revenues to do that. Consumptions. As we went through the late 90s into the 2000s, all of a sudden we start feeling impacts of water efficient appliances. So we watched our consumption go down. We watched at that time in the 2000 our building go down. And it had a drastic impact on where we are as we're trying to provide the capacity needed. So it had an impact on our rate structure. And so what we're doing there, of course, if you enterprise fund, the revenue's got to be there. And the house payment's still there.
Correct.
So we try to work and maintain, we look at our rates every year. We model our rates. We probably model them 3 or 4 times a year to tweak, to tighten up, say. Our capital plan, we defer projects that are not immediately needed. Additional capacity, you don't want to bring it on too late, but you don't want to bring it on too soon either. So we try to forecast that. So we're really, some of the things we're focusing on now is some rehab projects where we have some old mains that are just, we're spending too much operational time on. So that, and then growth, of course, we talk about ERUs, and ERU is equivalent residential unit. So a business might be 8 or something like that. So as we were going through the late 90s, early 2000s, we were seeing over 1,000 ERUs a year. And of course, we're in that growth spurt. When the building or when the economy sort of slowed down, we were down to 250. ERUs. Well, that was a large $7-8 million annual hit too. But now we've seen that come back. We're seeing 500 to 600, which is good. And you don't want to model right at the top. You want to make sure, because any excess revenue that we have that goes to reserve greater than we want reserve, we flip that back into cash funded capital. Instead of borrowing, we can pay for projects with that cash, which helps us in the long term on our rates. So that was a lot that I just threw out there. But all of them are influences to how we model and what we have to look at. And the key is being self-sustaining, ensuring that we have the capacity when you wake up in the morning that we can deliver the product or collect the product.
So certainly not a simple answer for what is definitely a complex question, but again, it's a lot of factors that kind of all feed in together to kind of determine, you know, like you said, rate structure and things like that, which are monitored, as you noted, multiple times throughout the year. But certainly, come budget time, that's where we're hearing what the projections are for the next year and working with that. You mentioned the debt service, which is certainly a huge part of what makes up how the department is run from that, if you want to lump that in with that. But
and on the revenue side, as we look at that, you know, you figure about 90% of our expenditures are fixed. Where our revenues, about at least 70% of it is variable because it's based on usage. So we have to ensure that we balance those two equations to
make it work. Now, I think we have a minute or two left in the program, but I want to go back to one thing because people might be like, okay, I've heard all this stuff, but again, who do I call if I have a question about a bill or anything like that? And Kim, I'm going to bring you back in again on that. Customer service-wise, someone has a question, I know they can come to City Hall and talk with one of your staff, but also if they wanted to call or something, give that number out one more time if you don't mind.
514-7000. Option 1 is for customer service. If you need someone besides customer service, we'll get you in the right department. But we are there from 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday.
And then again, you have people that are on call 24/7, and generally those staff members are out at the water treatment plant, correct? That you have people monitoring that there?
Yes, that same number will kick over after hours, and our water plant operators answer that phone. We also have staff from maintenance, line maintenance, on call. That should there be an issue in the field, they will reach out and call the appropriate staff. The other thing is that we get a lot of calls on is, you know, if someone had a question about water quality. Our water quality staff is located at the plant. Customer service can get them, or there's an option to call the plant too if you wait as you go through the phone tree. So
But again, where there's a question, we have an answer, or we have staff that can at least work through that answer to provide as much information as possible. And I think that goes into the customer service aspect of the department, which almost seems like that's sort of in the forefront. And depending upon whether you're talking about water quality, billing, or whatever, that it all funnels under that one category for offering the best product to our customers as best that we can and as efficiently as we can as well. Okay. Well, again, I appreciate you two spending time with us today to talk about the Department of Public Utilities here with the City of Suffolk. Again, 514-7000 is the number to call if you have a question. There is a phone tree, but option one is customer service, and that might be a good place to start. But certainly there are other avenues you can spin off from there to get contact with staff that can provide answers to those questions you may have. But again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. And that would do it for this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. We'll see you next time.